Me, 24. Subterranean parking garage attendant. Social skills of a damp sponge. Personality of a frozen loading screen. My job consists of pressing a single green button and trying not to dissolve into the ether. I am currently 300 pages into a fantasy novel thicker than a cinder block. The plot involves dragons and complex tax reform. It is the only thing keeping my brain from flatlining in this concrete tomb. The graveyard shift is a special kind of sensory deprivation. Suddenly the silence is shattered by the sound of failing brake pads and a screaming engine. A battered white cargo van rounds the corner, moving at Mach Jesus. It is heading straight for the low clearance bar at the entrance. The driver is clearly aiming for a vertical decapitation of the vehicle. My fight or flight response chooses a third option, which is mild cardiac arrest. I slam the emergency stop button with the frantic energy of a man possessed. The van screeches to a halt inches away from certain destruction. The driver's side door flies open with enough force to dent the concrete wall. Out hops a girl who is roughly 5'0" and made of pure concentrated chaos. She is covered entirely in flour and powdered sugar. She looks like a Victorian orphan who just survived an explosion in a donut factory. She vibrates at a frequency that I am certain can shatter safety glass. She marches up to my kiosk and slaps a floury hand against the window. She introduces herself as the overnight delivery driver for the local 24-hour hipster bakery. She speaks at a volume that suggests she has never heard of an indoor voice. She apologizes for almost turning her van into a very expensive convertible. Then she violently shoves a misshapen blueberry scone through the transaction slot. She tells me it is a bribe, and if I report her, she will haunt my bloodline. I look at the scone and then back at the sugar-coated gremlin. I tell her that, as far as I'm concerned, the van doesn't even exist. Her eyes widen even further, and she gives me a thumbs up that feels like a threat. She calls me a legend and says she'll see me on the next run. She sprints back to the van with the agility of a caffeinated squirrel. She peels out toward the loading dock, leaving a literal cloud of flour in the air. I am left standing in my sterile booth, holding a pastry like a sacred religious relic. The scone is still warm and smells better than anything I've eaten in a year. My soul tries to uninstall itself from the sheer awkwardness of the interaction. I take a bite and realize I might have just peaked in life. The silence of the garage returns, but it feels different now. I look at my massive book and realize dragons are much less stressful than bakery drivers. The green button is still there, but my hands are currently vibrating. I have officially met the final boss of the graveyard shift. The sterile silence returns for exactly 48 hours. Tuesday morning, 3:14 a.m. on the dot. The sound of failing brake pads echoes through the concrete levels. The white van drifts into view like a ghost in a flour mill. She hits the brakes so hard the suspension groans in agony. The door swings open with a violent metallic bang. You survived the scone. I did. It was actually the highlight of my week. Good because today is a crumpet day, but they look like crushed toads. She slams a cardboard box onto the transaction counter. I look inside at the mangled buttery dough. The toll is officially instituted. I am the gatekeeper of the garage. She is the chaotic merchant of the dawn. She operates on zero sleep and pure caffeinated spite. She bounces on the balls of her feet while waiting for the gate. I speak in lowercase letters and quiet sighs. She speaks in all caps and physical vibrations. She notices my thermos sitting by the green button. You drink that brown water like a peasant. It's just black coffee. It keeps the brain from flatlining. You look dead behind the eyes, like a haunted Victorian child. Thursday rolls around. 3:14 a.m. exactly. The van screeches. The flour cloud descends. She isn't empty-handed this time. Drink this or die. She hands me a specialized hyper-sugared espresso through the slot. It is thick, dark, and smells like a miracle. I haven't even told her how I take my coffee. She just saw the exhaustion and calculated the dosage. We spend her 15-minute loading window leaning against the kiosk. The topic of the night. The absolute worst movies ever. Made. She argues that the movie Cats is a psychological horror film designed to break the human spirit. I suggest a low-budget sci-fi where the monster is a sentient rug. She laughs so hard she accidentally leaves a flowery handprint on my shoulder. I don't wipe it off. I think I might keep it there forever. The loading dock alarm beeps. Her window of chaos is closing. Stay alive until next week. Troll Man. The van peels out, leaving the smell of vanilla and burnt rubber. The garage goes quiet again. I find myself checking the clock every 5 minutes. My cinderblock fantasy novel sits forgotten on the desk. Complex tax reform and the Dragon Kingdom can wait. I am actually looking forward to the sound of failing brake pads. The sugar goblin is my new anchor to reality. The graveyard shift finally has a heartbeat. 6 a.m. The fluorescent lights buzz like angry hornets. My relief arrives smelling of laundry detergent and optimism. I clock out with hands that still smell faintly of vanilla. I shuffle toward the pedestrian exit, bones feeling like lead. The glass doors slide open to a world painted in pre-dawn gray. The battered white van is idling at the curb. She is leaning against the hood, looking remarkably small. The flower is still there, but the vibration has stopped. She looks like a battery at 1%. You're late. I'm exactly on time. Close enough. Get in. I hesitate, my social battery sparking. We are going to the diner because eating pancakes alone is a felony. She drags me toward the passenger side. Her grip is firm, but surprisingly warm. The interior of the van smells like a bakery exploded in a gas station. We drive 3 blocks to a place that hasn't been cleaned since the 70s. The sign says Mama's, but the neon M is flickering out. We slide into a cracked vinyl booth. It smells like industrial bleach and ancient bacon. She doesn't even look at the menu. I want the lumberjack special and a side of waffles. She points a finger at me. And he wants black coffee and a nap. I just nod because arguing feels like trying to stop a landslide. The waitress brings the coffee, and I nurse it like a holy relic. She demolishes a mountain of eggs and syrup with terrifying efficiency. The manic bakery armor has cracks in it. Her eyes are bloodshot, but they're soft. So, tell me about the book. I blink, the coffee mid-sip. The cinder block? You'd be bored. Don't tell me what I'll be. Just talk. I start explaining the magic system, the way the dragons use tax reform to hoard gold legally, the bureaucracy of the fire breathers. I expect her to zone out or laugh. Instead, she leans in, chin resting on her flour-dusted palms. Wait. If the mana is tied to the interest rates, how do the peasants cast shield spells? I freeze. She actually listened. They don't, I explain. They have to take out magical loans. That is the most evil thing I've ever heard. I love IT. She asks about the secondary protagonist's political arc. Her questions are sharp, perceptive. The nervous knot in my chest starts to loosen. For the first time in years, I'm not just a guy in a booth. She watches me talk, a small, tired smile playing on her lips. The sun bleeds through the diner's grease-stained windows. The breakfasts become our unofficial post-shift ritual. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning. The same cracked vinyl booth in the back corner. We sit like 2 extremely tired gargoyles guarding a realm of cheap coffee. The waitress stops bringing menus. She just brings the lumberjack mountain and the black abyss. I start noticing the small things. How she strictly organizes her syrup packets by color. How she wipes the condensation off the sugar pourer with ritualistic precision. Her knuckles are always dusted with flour that refuses to wash off. I realize I am staring. I start tapping my knuckles against the laminate table. A nervous habit I didn't know I had. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythm of a brain trying to reboot. She stops her syrup sorting. Without saying a word, she slides her hand across the table. Her palm is warm and slightly rough. She lightly taps my knuckles back, matching my rhythm. Then she just leaves her hand there, covering mine. Neuron activation occurs. My brain completely short-circuits. The logic center of my mind goes offline. I forget how to breathe for a solid 3 seconds. I look up, expecting a joke. Instead, she gives me a soft, genuinely warm smile. The chaotic gremlin persona completely evaporates. She looks at me like I am the only person left on Earth. It is a look that could melt a glacier. It definitely melts my cynical defense systems. The noise of the diner fades into a dull hum. We pay the check and step out into the freezing morning air. The wind cuts through my thin security uniform. She shivers violently. I forgot my jacket in the van again. She doesn't wait for a response. She casually links her arm through mine, huddling close for warmth. I walk toward the parking lot stiff as a board, I am a human pillar of salt. I am praying she cannot hear my heart attempting to escape my rib cage. It is hitting my ribs like a frantic bird in a cage. Her head rests briefly against my shoulder. See you at 3:14, troll man. I stand there until her taillights vanish into the gray. The weeks lose their edges. Time is measured in flour dust and caffeine levels. Tuesday and Thursday are no longer enough for her. The white van starts appearing on off nights too. She doesn't just deliver anymore, she stays. My parking kiosk is 6 square feet of sterile glass. She claims half of it by divine right. A corner of my desk is now a graveyard of bakery manifests. Her oversized hoodie hangs from my spare chair. It smells like cinnamon and exhaust fumes. I don't complain. We develop a language of shrugs and shared glances. I know when she needs a double espresso before she says a word. She knows when my social battery is at 5%. She brings a laptop that has seen better decades. Move over, troll man. I have high scores to shatter. She plays rhythm games with a violence that scares me. Her fingers blur across the keys like lightning. I open the Cinderblock fantasy novel. Chapter 42, The Dragon's Audit. Read it to me. I hesitate, clearing my throat. I start reading about the logistics of horde-based economies. She doesn't look up from her glowing screen, but her tapping feet slow down to the rhythm of my voice. A Porsche Cayenne idles at the gate. The resident looks at us like we're zoo animals. I reach for the green button, my back straightening. She grabs a blank clipboard and stares at it with lethal intensity. We are conducting a subterranean friction test, sir. Please proceed. The resident pales and speeds away into the dark. She gives me a wink and goes back to her game. My depressing concrete bunker feels smaller, but it also feels warmer. The isolation of the night shift used to be a weight. Now it is a shield. The world ends at the edge of the parking gate. Inside the glass, there is just us. I realize I haven't looked at the clock in hours. She rests her feet on the edge of my chair. You're doing the knuckle thing again. I stop the tapping immediately. Don't stop. I like the beat. I start again, softer this time. She hums a melody I don't recognize. The graveyard shift isn't a tomb anymore. It's a sanctuary. I'm not dissolving into the ether. I'm finally solid. 4:02 a.m. The silence is broken by the whine of a high-end engine. A silver Porsche 911 idles at the gate. The window rolls down with a smooth, expensive hum. A man in a tailored suit glares at me through the glass. Hey you, the car's dusty. I blink, my brain still stuck in the Dragon Kingdom. I'm sorry, sir. Wash it, now. I have a meeting at 6. He tosses a $20 bill at the transaction slot. It hits the glass and flutters to the floor like a dead bird. I start to stand up, my corporate script loading in my throat. I'm very sorry, sir, but our liability insurance doesn't... The chair next to me screeches against the floor. The gremlin is on her feet before I can finish. She slides the window open with a violent bang. Absolutely not. The resident recoils, blinking at the flower-covered girl in my booth. Who even are you? I am the subterranean wastewater compliance officer. She points a flowery finger directly at his pristine hood. Are you aware of Municipal Code 402-B? The man stammers, his expensive confidence wavering. Code? What? Unauthorized hydraulic discharge in a confined concrete structure. She leans out the window, eyes wide and terrifyingly intense. That's a $5,000 fine per gallon. I look at her, then back at the man. She isn't blinking. She looks like she's ready to bite his bumper off. Plus, the drainage system is undergoing a friction calibration. She slams a blank bakery manifest against the glass. Do you want to be responsible for a structural collapse? The resident looks at the manifest, then at her chaotic hair. He puts the car in reverse so fast the tires chirp against the concrete. Forget it. I'll go to a professional detailer. He vanishes into the dark levels of the garage. Silence returns, heavy and sweet. She turns around, wiping a smudge of flour off her nose. She gives me a triumphant, jagged thumbs up. What was code 402-B? I made it up. It sounded official and scary. She sits back down, her shoulder brushing mine. I'm impressed, and a little terrified. Nobody talks down to my favorite toll booth troll. She says it softly, the fire in her eyes turning into pure warmth. She adjusts the collar of my uniform with a surprisingly gentle hand. I look at her, and the air in the booth feels electric. I finally admit it to myself. I am hopelessly, dangerously in love with this feral bakery driver. The air in the booth stays heavy. She doesn't move back to her side of the desk. The delivery manifest lies forgotten between us. The loading dock alarm is silent. She stays. 10 minutes pass, 20. Our knees bump under the tiny metal desk, a spark of static electricity. Neither of us pulls away. I hold my breath, waiting for a joke. It never comes. She leans her head against my shoulder. She sighs, a long, ragged sound of relief. I go rigid, not from fear, but from the weight of her trust. Her eyes flutter shut. The sugar goblin finally runs out of fuel. She's asleep in seconds. I sit perfectly still. I am a human statue guarding her rest. I breathe in. She smells like vanilla extract and burnt cinnamon. Underneath it all, the sharp tang of engine oil. The concrete walls feel less like a prison and more like a fortress. The temperature in the garage drops. A draft snakes through the glass. She shivers in her sleep. I reach back with one hand, moving in slow motion. I grab my oversized winter coat from the hook. I drape it over her shoulders like a heavy shield. She nuzzles into the collar, breathing in my scent. My heart hits my ribs like a hammer. An hour of perfect, terrifying silence. The printer whirs to life, spitting out the final manifest. She jerks awake, blinking at the fluorescent lights. She realizes she's wearing my coat. A deep, dark blush creeps up her neck. It's the first time I've seen her without a retort ready. She pulls the coat tighter for a split second. Thank you. Her voice is barely a whisper. No caps, no vibration. Just her. You're welcome. She hands the coat back, her fingers lingering on the sleeve. The tension in the booth is thick enough to cut with a broadsword. She stops at the door. See you Thursday, troll man. The door clicks shut. I am left alone with the smell of vanilla and a racing pulse. The sky turns a bruised, ugly purple. The first snowflake hits the glass like a warning shot. 2 hours later, the world is gone, just white static and the howling wind. The city is a frozen corpse. I watch the entrance ramp like a man waiting for a ghost. 3:14 a.m. passes in silence. 4 a.m. The green button feels like a tombstone. The wind screams through the concrete levels. Then, I hear it. Not the usual roar. A dying cough of an engine. The white van limps into the light. It's sliding sideways, fighting the ice. It stops 3 feet short of the gate. The engine sputters and dies. The door doesn't bang open this time. It creaks. She stumbles out into the slush. She isn't vibrating. She's shaking. Her hoodie is soaked through. Her face is ghostly pale, nose tipped with red. She's clutching a soggy box of pastries. The flour on her face has turned to a sticky paste. I don't think. I leave the kiosk, the alarm beeping behind me. The air hits me like a physical punch. I grab her by the elbows before she hits the ground. She's ice cold. The heater? It just stopped. Her voice is small, broken. I didn't think I'd make it. I guide her into the booth, kicking the door shut. The heater inside is humming at max capacity. I don't ask questions. I pull my spare thermal blanket from the locker. I wrap her in it, then pile my backup hoodie on top. I'm fine, just... You're not fine. Sit. I press her into the chair. She looks at the ruined box of donuts on the desk. They're all mush. I ruin the run. Her eyes well up with silent, frustrated tears. The sugar goblin is gone. I dig out the emergency stove and a packet of instant cocoa. I hand her the styrofoam cup. Her hands are still trembling as she grips it. Drink. She takes a sip, the steam clouding her vision. I almost turn back, she whispers. Why didn't you? Because I knew you'd be here, and I didn't want to be anywhere else. The wind howls against the glass like a dying god. Outside, the city has vanished into a white void. Inside the booth, the air is thick with the smell of cocoa and damp wool. We are huddled on the floor of the kiosk, a fortress made of thermal blankets and spare jackets. The fluorescent lights hum a low, steady drone. The world has shrunk to these 6 square feet of concrete and glass. She is still wrapped in my oversized winter coat. Her color is finally coming back. Those massive, exhausted eyes find mine in the dim light. She looks smaller without the van and the manic energy. Just a girl hiding from the storm. The silence isn't awkward anymore. It's a cocoon. I watch the steam rise from her half-empty cup. You know, I hate this job. Her voice is soft, barely rising above the hum of the heater. I hate the flour and the 2 a.m. alarms and the failing brakes. She looks down at the styrofoam cup. But I've never missed a Tuesday or a Thursday. I shift slightly, my shoulder pressing firmly against hers. Because of the scone bribes, she lets out a tiny, tired laugh that vibrates through me. No, troll man, because you're the only thing that makes any sense. You're the only reason I haven't driven that van into the river. My heart does a slow, heavy roll in my chest. The nervous knot is still there, but it has changed. It's not anxiety anymore, it's gravity. I take a breath, the air tasting like vanilla and cinnamon. My life was a frozen loading screen before you showed up. I wasn't even living. I was just waiting for 6 a.m. I look at her, really look at her, through the shadows. You're the best thing that's ever happened to this tomb. She doesn't look away. The dominant spark returns to her eyes. It is warm, protective, entirely feral. She sets the empty cup on the floor with a click. Then, talk is over. She reaches out with a sudden, decisive movement. Her flour-dusted fingers curl into the collar of my security uniform. She pulls me down into her space with terrifying strength. I don't resist. I couldn't even if I wanted to. She kisses me with the same intensity she uses to drive. Chaotic, urgent, absolute. It tastes like cheap hot chocolate and victory. It feels like coming home after a century in the dark. My hands find her waist, steadying the world. The blizzard can have the city. I have everything I need right here. The fluorescent lights flicker as the sun bleeds through the frost. The morning shift guy taps a knuckle against the glass. He stares at the blanket fort on the booth floor. He stares at the empty cocoa cups and the flour-dusted girl in my arms. I don't give him the satisfaction of an explanation. I just untangle my legs and help her to her feet. She rises with me, stretching like a cat until her bones pop. The blizzard has left the city under a shroud of perfect, silent white. My shift is over. The concrete tomb is no longer my home. She grabs my hand, her palm warm and rough with dried flour. We walk through the lobby, leaving messy footprints on the marble. The morning air is sharp enough to cut lungs. We trudge toward the diner, slipping on the hidden ice. She catches me by the elbow every time I stumble. Watch your step, troll man. I've spent too much effort on you for you to break a hip now. I squeeze her hand back. I think I'll be okay. We're celebrating. Official status requires the largest waffle in existence. We slide into the cracked vinyl booth. The smell of bacon and old grease feels like a homecoming. She doesn't even look at the menu. She wants the victory stack. And give him the real coffee, not the brown water. She leans across the table, the morning light catching her eyes. The manic vibration is gone, replaced by a steady, protective glow. She starts listing plans for Saturday, an actual date, in the daylight, without a delivery van or a security uniform in sight. I realize I'm not checking the clock. I'm not waiting for 6 a.m. anymore. I'm just waiting for her next sentence. The waffle arrives, a mountain of carbs and syrup. She cuts it with the precision of a surgeon and feeds me the first bite. I tease reward for surviving the storm. I swallow the sugar and look at the girl who saved me from the ether. The Cinderblock fantasy novel is still sitting in my locker. The dragons can keep their tax reform and their gold. I don't need to escape into a book anymore. My reality finally has a heartbeat. I'm not just a ghost in a parking garage. The concrete tomb is gone, and for the first time, I'm actually awake.